What if the most unsettling truth about mythology is not how different cultures imagine their worlds, but how similar those imaginations become when they confront fear, death, and the unknown? Across continents that never touched, across languages that never met, and across civilizations separated by centuries, the same figures begin to appear again and again, not identical in form, but unmistakably familiar in essence. The names change, the symbols shift, but the roles remain, as if humanity, no matter where it exists, keeps returning to the same shapes when trying to explain what it fears the most. Consider the figure of Medusa, whose image as a woman transformed into a creature of terror has endured far beyond the boundaries of Greek mythology. Her gaze petrifies, her appearance repels, and her story is often framed as a cautionary tale of transformation into something monstrous. Yet when we move beyond Greece, we begin to encounter figures that echo her presence in unsettling ways. In Japanese folklore, the figure of Yukiana appears as a beautiful woman who exists on the boundary between attraction and danger, drawing people in before revealing a fatal nature hidden beneath calm exterior. Similarly, the Rokurokubi embodies the distortion of the human form into something uncanny, something that begins as familiar but gradually reveals its otherness. In Norse mythology, while there is no direct equivalent, figures such as Hel carry a duality in appearance, part living, part decayed, blurring the boundary between beauty and horror. These figures, like Medusa, are not merely monsters. They are transformations of the human into something that reflects a deeper anxiety, one that lies not in the external threat, but in the idea that what is familiar can become dangerous. This pattern becomes even more striking when we turn to the rulers of death. In Greek mythology, Hades is not the embodiment of evil, but the administrator of a realm that exists as a necessary counterpart to life. He governs, he maintains order, and he ensures that the boundary between the living and the dead remains intact. When we shift to Egyptian mythology, we encounter Anubis, a figure who guides souls through the transition of death, overseeing the weighing of the heart and the passage into the afterlife. Unlike Hades, Anubis does not rule a kingdom, but he fulfills a similar function. He stands at the threshold, ensuring that the transition between states is preserved. In Norse mythology, Hel governs a realm for those who do not die in battle, a space that is neither glorified nor demonized, but simply exists as part of the natural order. Across these traditions, death is not chaos. It is structured, managed, and personified. It is given a face, not to make it less real, but to make it more understandable. What emerges from these comparisons is not coincidence, but convergence. Cultures that never interacted still produced figures that occupy the same conceptual roles. The transformed woman who embodies fear and fascination, the guardian of death who ensures continuity, the boundary figure who stands between worlds. These are not random creations. They are responses to shared human experiences. Fear of the unknown, fear of transformation, fear of death. These are not bound by geography or culture. They are inherent to existence itself. And this leads to a deeper realization. Perhaps monsters are not external threats at all, but reflections of internal anxieties. Medusa's gaze, which turns others to stone, can be understood not just as a weapon, but as a metaphor for paralysis. The fear that something so overwhelming, so incomprehensible, can render us unable to act. The figures of Japanese yokai, with their shifting forms and hidden natures, reflect the uncertainty of appearances, the idea that what we see may not be what truly exists. The rulers of the underworld, whether Hades, Anubis, or Hell, represent the inevitability of an end that cannot be avoided, only understood. In this sense, mythology becomes less about explaining the world and more about processing it. Each culture creates its own language of symbols, but the underlying message remains consistent. The unknown must be given form in order to be faced. And once it is given form, it becomes something that can be named, remembered, and perhaps endured. So when we ask why every civilization seems to have its own version of monsters, the answer may not lie in the stories themselves, but in the minds that created them. Because beneath the differences in culture, belief, and expression, there exists a shared human condition, one that seeks to understand fear by turning it into something visible, something recognizable, something that, even in its most terrifying form, feels strangely familiar.